The Focke-Wulf FW190 was one of the greatest planes of the Second World War, but the company made many other aircraft that was used inside of the Luftwaffe service during the conflict. The Focke-Wulf 58 Harrier was a twin-engine aircraft that had many different roles during the war. The Luftwaffe asked the manufacturers to create a plane which could serve as an advanced trainer for pilots and other aircrews such as gunners. What emerged was the FW58, a low-wing monoplane. There were in total 1,350 FW58s made, and these were then pressed into service, and it was introduced in 1937, 2 years after its first flight. During the Second World War, it had a huge amount of roles, from serving as an air ambulance to a photo reconnaissance plane, and even was used to transport high-ranking Nazis. There is only one FW58 on display in the world today, in the museum in Rio in Brazil, but there is one that lies today deep underwater in a French lake, and this is the story of that Focke-Wulf. To support our channel, please make sure to subscribe. During the Second World War, France fell under German occupation rather quickly. The armistice was signed on the 22nd of June 1940, following the success of the German Blitzkrieg, and the occupation was rough for many people. Different pieces of infrastructure fell into enemy hands. Inside of France, at one airport, the Navigation School No. 4 of the 3rd Air Fleet was based there, and they trained. Students trained on the Focke-Wulf FW58C, and they were studying how to become radio operators for a bomb squadron. The aircraft was also used to connect air bases in Rouen and Lyon, and they were used to keep an eye on local areas. On the 30th of March 1943, at 1:15 p.m, a Focke-Wulf 58 took off with 4 men on board. They were taking part on a training flight and flew over the Alps and passed over the city of Saint-Jean-Chantillon. After this, they went over Lake Bourget. This was actually not allowed by the Luftwaffe trainers, but the 4 men wanted to celebrate, and there was a tradition inside the Luftwaffe for graduates who had passed their course to fly low over a lake or landmark to celebrate. It was Sergeant Ernst Kronz who was the pilot. However, it went very wrong, and the aircraft hit the lake and the water, and the aircraft crashed badly. The pilot and Corporal Kurt Becker were both killed in the crash, but 2 other members of the Luftwaffe on board managed to survive, and fishermen who had seen the crash helped rescue the 2 who were floundering in the water. At the time of the crash, the water temperature was just 3 degrees Celsius and close to freezing, and if the men who had not been killed had remained in the water for a matter of minutes, they would have died from hypothermia. They were both incredibly lucky, and the survivors were taken in by local villagers and were given help by them. There was little to no chance of helping those who had died due to the temperature of the water, and to thank the locals, a German commander even freed 4 prisoners of war for saving the 2 Luftwaffe officers. However, the Focke-Wulf 58 aircraft sank to the bottom of the lake for decades, and as many of the locals passed away, the story of the Focke-Wulf in Lake Bourget died with them. But then in 1988, a piece of research was carried out, and the wreck was discovered at a depth of 117 metres resting. In 2004, the first venture down to the wreck took place, and what was found shocked the researchers and divers. The swastika symbol was still visible on the tail of the plane, and the divers claimed it looked as if it had been painted on the day before. The 2 wings of the FW58 were still attached to the plane, and the shell of the aircraft was partially preserved, and pieces of the fuselage had broken off in the decades following the war. There were also rips into the metal on the tail, and the divers could see through the damage to the fuselage and the aircraft control panels and dials. Many of the decal labels which had been placed on the aircraft during the war years were still on. The nose of the aircraft was wedged in mud, and parts of the landing gear and into the cockpit could be seen, but visibility impaired the divers getting a crystal clear look. The aircraft in places was skeletal. It had been well preserved by the dark and cold water. However, the canvas over the frame was deteriorating, and today it is still. There have been suggestions by different companies to try and lift the Focke-Wulf 58 out of Lake Bourget. However, there has been a significant amount of opposition from local divers, and it is technically a war grave, and despite the divers not noting any bodies inside the aircraft, the visibility prevented confirmation of this, and it is listed as a war grave. It's alleged that a family member who was related to one of the men who died on board the plane has outlined her opposition to lifting the aircraft based on the fact that one of her relatives may still be inside. It's more likely that in the past 80 years that the body would have been reduced to nothing or little and would have been picked at by wildlife. There is also opposition to lifting it due to the risk of damaging the plane, as it did look in brittle condition. Today the Focke-Wulf still lies deep in Lake Bourget, where it landed on the 30th of March 1943 in the cold water. It's the conditions of the lake that have helped preserve the aircraft in the state it is today, and the haunting image of the swastika on board was photographed and intimidated the men who dived down to the wreck. It's resting nose deep in the mud and will probably remain there for many more decades and years to come. Thanks for watching. To support our channel, please make sure to subscribe, and once again, thank you so much for watching.